Thank you very much, Godfrey. I'm really looking forward to this segment. Earlier this month, a very disturbing video circulated on social media showing several boys at the Children's Emergency Hostel being beaten. I can't even say disciplined, beaten by staff there, although we're not going to kind of address that incident directly. We wanted to have a conversation to examine what discipline and corporate punishment should look like. Here to discuss this with us this morning are Ms. Jewel Taylor, school psychologist, Dr. Jason Stubbs, marriage and family therapist, and Dr. Valerie Knowles, clinical psychologist. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen. Welcome back to Bahamas at Sunrise.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I tell you, this is such a heavy topic. I don't know where to start and who to start with, but this conversation related to discipline, related to corporate punishment has been going on for a long time. It's cultural, so many different aspects of it. But what at its core is the function and then the basic definitions associated, particularly with discipline. Dr. Stubbs, let's start with you, actually.
Yes. Well, good morning. It's so good to be at Bahamas at Sunrise. And to answer your question, generally in our field, discipline is the basis of imparting knowledge and skills. The essence of discipline should be to teach. And now it's often equated with control and punishment. But at the end of the day, it's to impart knowledge and a skill and to teach. And to the function of discipline really should be, it should be something that's given by the adult who has a bond with the child, number one. Number two, it should be something that's consistent and close to a behavior modification process. And it should be perceived by the child as fair. Now, I'm sure some of the other experts will go there and talk about what that looks like in our Bahamian context. And then also it should be a developmental and temperamental age-appropriate engagement with the child. And lastly, should be a self-enhancement, ultimately leading to self-discipline for the child, because the parent or the caregiver won't be with that child forever in life. So it's supposed to teach them a skill that they can engage and participate throughout their life.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people who are watching these, even some of us as adults, thinking, "Ooh, that don't sound like it." That don't sound like I remember. But again, so let's dig a little bit deeper then. So what really are the differences then between discipline, abuse, corporal punishment? What are the appropriate forms? Dr. Knowles?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Dr. Stubbs said, in that really at the end of the day, we're trying to socialize the child to live in a community and a group. Okay? So it's a lifelong learning process that never stops, but you're always trying to develop those self-control skills that helps you to know how to balance between doing what I want to do and doing what the group needs me to do, whether that's home, school, or society in that process. But, and I think that's a very good question between discipline and punishment. I think we have begun to use them interchangeably. In my mind, I will just say that punishment is based on pain and shame, and is rooted in the idea that children only do better when they experience pain, right? And I see discipline as being based on the idea that the child will do better when they feel better, and they don't need to hurt in order to learn. And to me, that's the fundamental difference. And so what happens is when the exercise is over, the child is feeling better, like there's a knowledge increase, there'll be some discomfort, but my soul hasn't been shattered. And as opposed to the punishment base, where the goal is really for you to experience humiliation so you can avoid the behavior the next time.
I'll tell you what, I mean, I don't know if you saw the video, we're not going to talk about it per se, but unfortunately, that's not too uncommon, maybe not to that extreme, but certainly we know that it happens, within our society, within our culture, not just in Bahamas here, but maybe it's Caribbean as well, maybe it's Black, so when we start talking about, why this is such a controversial topic, Dr. Taylor, yes, it's important, but it can have a negative impact mentally, physically, etc. What role does Bahamian culture play in the types of techniques that are utilized?
So basically, when we look at it, especially like within the Bahamian context, we look at discipline as, Dr. Stubbs and Dr. Noel said, as being more of physical punishment or that corporal punishment to inflict that pain so they could say, what, do as I say and not as I do. But it's looking at more of like the beating, whether it's, you pick up anything and you beat a child with, whether it's a belt or a spoon or anything. Exactly. It's looking at, the screaming and the shouting from across the room, across the hall, making that presence felt. It's looking at the threatening, and it's actually looking at the shaming. And within our Bahamian context, it's became so adopted and culturally accepted that, what, you spare the rod, you spare the child. And to us, that looks at, beating, and I'm going to beat my child. And we need to look at it in more of a form of effective discipline and how that should look. Just as Dr. Stubbs said, it's more of imparting knowledge, not just beating, but explaining what's going on, explaining to the child, okay, do you see what happened, or how we got to this point, and let's try to change this behavior to be more of a healthier behavior.
Well, I tell you what, usually there is a conversation that's going on during the discipline.
It's true.
You can't repeat the words. But Dr. Stubbs, you talked about, age specific types of discipline. What are the appropriate forms for appropriate ages of discipline?
And then we get into developmental psychology when we get into that. And when you think through how you would discipline a 2-year-old versus a 19-year-old, the discipline methods must be different. So, for example, with a 2-year-old, you want to utilize more developmental, age-appropriate dialogue in regards to a behavior, versus a 20-year-old, it needs to be more adult dialogue in regards to, you wouldn't talk to a 20-year-old the same way you talk to a 19-year-old, or a 2-year-old or a 9-year-old. So I think, to get into the specifics of it, I think we just have to be mindful of the level of development. And just because they're 19 or 20 still doesn't mean you talk to them as an adult, because it still has to be age appropriate developmentally, because some 19-year-olds are still developmentally 12, 10. So, and in our context, myself, having corporal punishment growing up, I still have to understand, and we have to understand, that when we're dealing with our children, it must be, the playing field must be leveled in regards to how we discipline them. And so there's a lot to unpack there.
There is a lot to unpack, and I'm just kind of sitting here and I'm thinking, even back to, my own childhood, where, not only was there, many different forms of discipline, it came from, many different types of people in our lives. Everybody had almost permission, to discipline a child. Dr. Knowles, once again, so there's from the child perspective, and then there's also from the adult perspective, the person who is administering it. The psyche involved in this runs very deep, especially here in the Bahamas. So what should be the approach for an adult? And, are there, obviously there are different levels. And of course, we get upset, but really should discipline occur when we are in that type of mindset?
I think what's important, and I think you're very important, it's important that you said, what is the mindset? Because like you said, discipline always just looks at what's coming out of the parent. I think every parent who has a child has been at that point and they're triggered, that's my word, and it's like, hold on here, right? But I think one of the things that happens when we have abuse is that many times, I think culturally, we interpret misbehavior as a personal insult. Okay, there's not a focus on what's happening with the child. I'm going back to Dr. Stubbs and talking about being age appropriate. Does he understand? Does he know? Can he deliver the behavior I want? That's not what's going through my mind. I said do something, you didn't. Now it's on now, right? There's no discipline here. This is a war here. How dare you disrespect me?
Right.
And so many times it boils down to settling a matter of disrespect. So I need to beat you down. And the next time you hear something coming from me, you will respond. It doesn't matter what you think or what you feel, which does not meet the standards of discipline, because you're shaping the thoughts and the feelings of the child, and helping them to endure impulses as they wait for a better result. That never factors in many, many times, particularly if you're in a stressed out environment. It's simply it's between me and you, and I'm going to show you who I am today. And that becomes the goal of the interchange. No teaching, no, like, only one thing you must learn. And listen here, don't play with me. Don't disrespect me. Now, any other lesson is not important right now.
Yeah. So what should be the approach? Dr. Taylor, so what should be the approach when you get in that, again, that mindset, you're upset, it's hard to control, you feel offended, it's almost sounds as though you made it about you as opposed to the action or the child. So what should be the approach for the person administering some form of discipline?
So I would look at it more of being able to step outside that and actually check you and check your emotions and see what's going on. Because are you more upset, at the child's behavior, or are you more upset, like Dr. Noel said, or are you more offended that you disrespect me, or I as the adult, you do as I say, you do as I do. So a lot of it, just check your own internal bases, check your own biases before you then say something that you would regret or didn't want to say, or do something that you didn't want to do, which will inflict pain and cause a greater sense of shame and pain. But more so much do a lot of communication, and just as Dr. Stubbs said, that would then increase with age. You talk to a 2-year-old a specific way, but then you also talk to a 19-year-old in a specific way. You model the behaviors that you want children to do. So if you say, don't scream in my house, when you want to discipline me, mommy, I shouldn't hear you screaming from across the hall because you just say don't scream. So model the behaviors you want to see. Set clear limits and set clear boundaries, and always stick with it. You can reinforce it today, and when you see a change in the behavior, say, okay, well, they're good, but no, you have to stick with it and make discipline more consistent, and long-term. Just as Dr. Stubbs and even Dr. Noel said, it's not a one-time thing, but it's more of a process.
It's a process. It's a process, and also set good examples. Listen, we and pray. Pray. So listen, ladies, Jen, thank you so much for being here on Bahamas and Sunrise. We're going to have to do this again. I mean, obviously, we just don't have enough time. Jewel Taylor, school psychologist, Dr. Jason Stubbs, marriage and family therapist, and Dr. Valerie Knowles, clinical psychologist with that pink background. And we're going to get that story soon. You're watching Bahamas at Sunrise. We'll be right back.